configure active high availability, right guys? So let me go ahead and let me start with my labs, right? So since today we are going to perform high availability, so we would require to have at least two big IP LTM. So I have big IP LTM1 and then LTM2. So I have both of them, right? So I'm going to start them. So LTM1, and thereafter I'll start with LTM2, right? I have one user machine, right? And also I have GNS3 topology, right guys? One sec. Hmm. A sec. Also, what I will do, because this machine is not needed anymore, right? So I'll just go ahead and I will remove it from disk. So it's not needed, right? So delete from disk. Yes, here we go. And then it's removed. Just trying to manage my storage because the storage is not so much, but I have a lot of data, right? So that's why it's you know Okay, so data has been copied successfully and now it looks good, right? So fine. Big IP LTM1, LTM login, so that's root. License expired, my issues. Let me just go ahead and let me see what the IP address is, the management IPs, right? Both of the LTM. So list this management IP, so that's your 2.245, and here list this management IP 2.244 on LTM2, right? So I see Rahul has also joined in. Okay, perfect. So let me go ahead and have the GUI access of LTM. So first I'll start working over one LTM only. So TTPS 168.2.245. Here we go. Admin, get logged in. Okay. So license is already expired on both of the boxes. So what I will do, I'll reactivate that. To do so, I would require some keys that I already have. So I'm going to use the first key on our first LTM, right? And thereafter go manual, say next. Another key on another LTM. That's LTM2. Say reactivate, edit, manual, the next. You have your dossier file now. Click on F5 licensing server, apply your dossier file, the next, same on next one. Okay, so for first one, we have got the license now almost. Give it a moment. We will get the license now pretty soon. For second, we have got the dossier, OP dossier, go to licensing server, apply your dossier, say next, accept. You have got the license for LTM1, paste license, say next. Also, we have got the license for LTM2, paste license, and then click next. So our first one, like it says like big IP system configuration has changed. No issues. Same over LTM2. Will take some time, right? And finally it will be up. So let both of the big IPs come up, and thereafter we will start with IApp, then iHealth, then I'll go for high availability, and that's why I have enabled two different big IPs today, right? So I'll perform high availability using active standby as well as active failover. Okay. Thereafter I'll go for some other stuff like TCP dump and like that, and finally I'll go for iRules, right? And that's what we will cover tomorrow, right? So tomorrow I'll cover the iRules, not today. So LTM1 is all good, right? It says like offline, standalone, no issues. And once this box is up and running, right? Thereafter, I'll go ahead and will remove everything from this box. Like I'll go back and like I'll put it in factory default configuration, right? Okay, here we go. LTM1. system is performing pretty slow. The first box has came up now, and it's active standalone. I'm going to okay. CPU is quite high. Okay. Let me remove that tab. Last tab as well. So LTM2 is giving some error messages here. So let it come up. Until then, let me go back to the LTM1. And over LTM1, what I will do, like earlier it was saying like license expired, but now it's all good. So I'll just say load this config. Just check this default. So when I say load sysconfig default, which means that I'm going to put this device back into factory default uh, config mode, right? So I'm loading the default configuration now. So it will ask for the factory defaults. So I said yes. Similarly, over LTM2, I'll be doing same. It's active and available. Let me see that onto the tab as well. So yeah, it's active online, but it is still showing me disconnected. So what I will do, I'll go back to LTM2 and thereafter I'll just say load this config default. Yes, and here we go. So what I have done is on LTM1 and LTM2 on both of the LTMs, I have just That's good. That's back. LTM2, it is also back. Let me go back to their GUI. Logins, login again. Just a minute. I have to change the password over the first login. Then for LTM1, so default, like once you have reset it, the config, the default user ID password would be admin for GUI, right? So new password will remain same as before, which is imerita, I capital at 123. So we are logged in back onto the device. So now again, we will have to start with the setup utility. So say next, guys, say next, right? Say next. Say next. Host name, that's LTM1, cisco.com, right? And password. Okay. So next. Similarly, over LTM2, start the setup utility. LTM is already provisioned, so you don't have to do anything with resource provisioning, right? It's nominal by default. So on LTM1, let's finish this up. LTM2, it will ask for the host name and thereafter the root password. Here we go. LTM1, LTM2, both of them are active. So first I'm going to configure high availability, and that would be active standby, and thereafter I'll go for IAP and some other stuff. That's LTM2. So guys, if you remember, I have already told you that which topology we are using here. So F5 topology, here we go, GNS3. Look at this. Look at this topology. IP addresses would be same as before, but this time, like today, we have two different LTMs which will be participating in this topology. So first, I'm going to create VLANs assigning self IPs, and thereafter we will start deploying nodes, pools, pool members like that. Let the topology come. So here we have two different big IPs, right? So 20.1 is like 20.1 and 20. We have to have two different IP addresses today, right? Because the topology will be like this. My labs, okay. Then we log in. F5 lab. Where is F5 LTM? All right. So the topology will be like this. You have two different big IPs, right? So guys, the IP addresses will also get changed accordingly in this topology. So you know that earlier we were having only one big IP, and for external VLAN we were using this IP address 100.1. So it will still remain same, but it would be a virtual IP, right? It would be a virtual IP, because we would require to have a virtual IP in between both of them, right? So I can make you understand in this way, like using this topology, right? So let me just use my pen over here. So, uh, for internal subnet, we are using this subnet, right? 20.0/24. For external, we are using like 192.168. Let me just tell you. So here we are using 192.168.100.0/24, right, guys? So here on Big IP1, um, since we have two different big IPs and one will be active, other one will be standby, right? So what I will do on big IP1, I'll assign this IP address like 192.168 dot 20 dot maybe 20 dot um, let's say 253, and here I'll be assigning 191.68.20.254, and this is your physical interface IP, right? Then I'll also assign floating IP address, which is also known as virtual IP, and the virtual IP address would be like 192.168.20.1, and same here, 192.168.20.1. That would be a virtual IP. For external VLAN, the subnet is 191.168.100.0/24. So 100.254 is already assigned to DCH. 100.254 is already assigned here. So here, what I will do, I'll make it like 100 dot, let's say 252, and then 100.253, because 254 is already in use, right? And dot one will be virtual IP. It would be a virtual IP for external interfaces. So this is what we are going to use now. Okay. So because we are going to configure high availability, so we must have a virtual IP address in place, right? So that's what we will be using here, right? So just keep this diagram in mind. If in fact you can draw it somewhere, or you can take the print the screen, and then you can keep it handy with yourself. Because while I'll start assigning IP addresses, so at least you should be knowing that why are we assigning those IP addresses over here. Okay. So have you taken the print screen of this diagram? Right.
Sir, noted it down.
Perfect. So let me do one thing now. Let me go back and let me turn on these devices first. So in backend, I had 6 servers, right? But instead, I have enabled, or I have turned on only 3 servers. And 3 servers are more than sufficient to perform our practice, right? Let me go back to my big IPs then. So this is my LTM1. Let me go back to the network tab. So first, I'm going to start with VLANs. So let me create the VLANs. Create. Guys, the VLAN name would be like internal VLAN. Tag is going to be VLAN 20. This is what I was supposed to have. Interface is 1.2, untagged, add, thereafter say repeat. We will have to create one more VLAN. This is, which is called external VLAN. And today we will also have one another interface called failover link, right? So 1.3 I'll be using for failover. Just keep that stuff in your mind, right? So now external VLAN, that's VLAN 10. And untagged, that's interface 1.1. This is fine, add, and then repeat. So external VLAN has also been created here. One more VLAN I would require to have onto this big IP, that is for failover link, right? So I'll create one more VLAN now. moment, maybe my CPU utilization is quite higher. So let me recalculate the ideal PC value over the GMS3. Should be okay. No? Yeah, it's fine now. Okay, all right. Let's go back to big IPs. So now assign name as like failover VLAN, that's VLAN 30, and then interface is going to be 1.3, and tag, add, and then finish this up. So we have created three different VLANs like internal VLAN, external VLAN, failover VLAN, and then now if you go back to interfaces, so the status of the interfaces will be up now, right? Similarly, I'll be doing it over STM2. Go to network tab, under network, go to VLANs, and then create your VLAN, right? So create like internal VLAN, VLAN ID is 20, interface is 1.2, untag, add, and then repeat. And thereafter, I'll create VLAN for external one. So I'll create external VLAN 10, interface 1.1, untag, add, repeat. And thereafter, failover VLAN. That's VLAN 30. So this configuration has to be same on both big IPs, right? So same on both of the big IPs. We have created three different VLANs. We have assigned like kind of same type of interfaces to them. Thereafter, let me assign self IPs. So go to self IPs, create. So I'm on LTM1 now. This is LTM1. You can see this is LTM1. There is a host name right in front of you. So I'm on LTM1. So this is internal IP, right? So internal IP. IP address is going to be 192.168. If you remember, I told you that's going to be 20.253 on LTM1. Netmask is going to be /24. VLAN is internal VLAN. By default, your port lockdown is there, and I have already told you that what's the meaning of port lockdown over here, right? So you can allow the ports as per your requirement, right? So I'll just say allow default, and first you have to allocate non-floating IP address, and thereafter only you will be able, because you can assign two different IPs to your interfaces. One floating IP, other one is non-floating. Non-floating is like physical IP of your interface. Floating is like virtual IP address. So I assume that you have some experience over configuring HSRP, VRRP. So if you remember, under interfaces, you do configure two different IP addresses, one physical IP of the interface, another one is virtual IP. So here, non-floating IP is non-floating IP is your physical IP, and floating will be your virtual IP. So if I directly configure floating IP, it will not accept that. You know why? Because without having non-floating, it is not possible to configure floating IP. Similarly, in HSRP, VRRP, and GLBP, if you don't configure physical IP address, and if you are trying to directly configure virtual IP address, it will not be possible, right? Or your command will not be accepted by the device. So first, you have to have like non-floating IP address in place. So non-floating is 253. Repeat. So now internal IP, and this time it would be a floating IP, right? So floating IP is going to be 192.168, right? 168.20.1. So that's my virtual IP address. Subnet mask, internal VLAN, allow default. This is fine. So now you are done for the internal VLAN. For external, like external IP, that's going to be 168.100.252. This is what I mentioned in the diagram, right? So netmask will remain same, VLAN external, VLAN allow default, non-floating, this is fine. Then repeat it, and thereafter say external IP floating IP, and that's going to be 100.1. Right, guys? External VLAN allow default, and then floating IP. Finished it. I think I have made some mistakes here, especially with this 20.1, right? If I go there, and then I should change it to floating only, because that was a virtual IP .1, right? So if you go back to self IPs, we have assigned IP addresses, two different types of IP addresses onto your LTM1. One is floating IP, other one is non-floating IP. Non-floating is physical IP of your interface, and floating is like, so when it says traffic group local only, which means your physical IP. When it says traffic group 1, that's it, which means it is your virtual IP address. So virtual IP will remain same on both of the LTMs, right? Finally, you will have to allocate an IP address onto your failover interface as well, right? So create one more IP address, so failover IP. So that's going to be, let's say 10.1.1 over here, /24, right? Or maybe /30. It's up to you, right, guys? VLAN is going to be failover VLAN, say allow default. And remember, allow default will allow that port which is used by the failover, right? Automatically. That's why I have said allow default over here. And I just have to have only physical IP address allocated onto failover interface. I don't have to have any kind of virtual IP address over failover link. So today we are using three different interfaces: 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. 1.1 is for external, 1.2 is for internal, and 1.3 is for failover link. So my failover link will be my 1.3 interface. So now you have configured IP addresses here on LTM1 in front of you, right? You can see all of the IP addresses, right, on all, on all expected interfaces. Thereafter, let me go back to LTM2 and let me create the self IPs over here as well. Create. So now provide some name here. Let's say internal IP, right? Internal IP, and thereafter the IP address is going to be 192.168.20.254. Thereafter /24 VLAN, internal VLAN, allow default, non-floating, this is fine, repeat, and then I'll assign internal floating IP. So internal IP float, IP address 192.168.20.1. Thereafter, internal VLAN, allow default, and then non-float. The floating IP address, right? So repeat, then assign an IP address to external. Assign external IP address. So IP address is going to be like 192.168.100.253, and subnet mask is going to be same, external VLAN, allow default, non-floating first of all, and then repeat, and then assign floating IP address onto your external interface, right? So that would be 100.1, right? And external VLAN, allow default, and then floating, then finish it. So that's how you have assigned an IP address onto your big IP LTM2. So you can see that floating IP address has been configured commonly on both of the big IPs, because your floating IP will work as a virtual IP address, and whoever is active will be responding for that virtual IP address, right? So we will be configuring like active standby failover first of all. Thereafter, assign IP address on your failover link as well. So to assign an IP address onto failover link, go ahead and create self IP for failover, right? So failover IP, that's 10.1.2 and 255 /30 VLAN failover VLAN, allow default, and then get this finished. So we have assigned an IP addresses onto both of the big IPs now, right? So I'll go ahead and we configure a default route as well. However, we can configure it later on as well, because now we have the failover link by which LTM1 can communicate with LTM2, right? So rest of the configuration we can make once active failover sync is in place, or active failover high availability. Once these both of the LTMs are part of the HA, right? High availability. So thereafter we can make any other configuration, like configuring a static default route, or maybe creating nodes, pools, virtual servers. So that's what we will keep doing once HA is in place. But this is the pretty basic configuration that you have to do. Like at least you have to configure, you have to create VLANs, you have to put interfaces into their respective VLANs, thereafter create self IPs, and make sure that you are allowing the port number for the failover configuration. And I'll let you know that what is the port number used by the big IP for the failover, right? That I will let you know, but That's something which is already part of the default, right? So by default, all interfaces are locked. But if you remember, during configuration, I allowed the default ports. Okay. So LTM1, LTM2, we have made kind of same configuration on both of them. Now I'm going to start it from LTM1. So if you want to start HA utility, right? So there are multiple ways. Like you can directly click on this F5 red button, like big F5, right? So if you click on this F5, it will open up this page now. And over here you have like setup utility, like run config sync HA utility. So you can click here and then you can continue here. Or you can go to system, you can go to high availability, and then you can say HA wizard. So you can also open up this HA wizard from there, right? So it's up to you. So next now, so first it will ask for, let me just show you. So I've started from LTM1. So it is asking for redundant device wizard option. So as I told you before in the beginning, that for HA, we have some dedicated links available onto physical boxes called serial link, serial port, right? So you can have a serial cable, right, for the failover. But this time we are depending only on network cable, right? And that's my 1.3 interface. Remember that today we have started to utilize another interface, which is 1.3, and that's the interface that I'll be using for the failover purposes. So I'll say network cable, right? Not because I don't have physical devices. Therefore, I don't have any serial cable, right? I do have only network cable. So say next. Thereafter, it is asking to create the internal network configuration, which I have already created. So either you create at this time or you already created and then say select existing VLAN. So I have just selected existing VLAN. For internal, I created internal VLAN. Select internal VLAN, and then it will show you self IP and the floating IP automatically, right? Port lockdown is there, port lockdown is there, VLAN, everything is displayed over here. You can see that, right? 1.2 interface, untagged VLAN ID is 20, okay? So once you select your existing VLAN, everything will pop up as per your configuration automatically. Then next, then it will ask for the external VLAN, right? So say select existing, and then select external VLAN. It will show you, the self IP, the floating IP, and it is also asking you to configure the default gateway because we never configured a default route over external VLAN. That's something that we will be configuring later on, right? So I'll skip because only this self is mandatory, right? This IP address is mandatory. Rest is optional, right? So VLAN ID is 10, and then 1.1 untagged is already there. Say next now. Then it will ask for the failover, like high availability network configuration. Either you create VLAN for your HA or select existing one. So I'll just say select existing one and then select failover VLAN. Because we have already created those VLANs, we have selected interfaces, we have allocated IP addresses, so everything will be displayed like this. Okay. So self IP is already there, VLAN ID, 1.3 and tag, everything is there, right? So next now. Now it will ask you NTP. So if you have NTP, which is good to have NTP in your network, but this time we don't have NTP server, right, guys? So I do not have any NTP server in my network. However, it is always good, or it is always recommended to have the NTP server prior to configure high availability, right, guys? But at the moment, I don't have an NTP server, and it is also not mandatory, optional, right? So I'll just say next. I'll skip that. Then it is asking for DNS configuration, like I can just say DNS lookup server list, bind forwarder, DNS search domain. So bind is like if you have a bind server. Bind server is nothing like you have configured a Linux-based server as a DNS server, right? These are normal DNS lookup servers. So if you have any, you can go ahead and configure that, but it's not really needed for me. So I'll just go ahead and will click on next without configuring, without making any configuration because nothing is mandatory over there, right? Then for config sync configuration, what is my local address? So that's my failover. So for config sync, like for example, if I'm making some configuration on one LTM, that should be replicated onto other LTM as well, right? So which interface I should use or which local address I should use for the config sync configuration. So I'm going to use failover link only. The next, then management failover unicast configuration. So the port number that it will be using is 1026, right? So by default, it will pick automatically the failover link and the management interface. If you want to keep both, keep both. If not, then you can also remove the management interface if you don't want to perform failover using management interface, right? So you can delete management interface. If you want to keep that, you can keep that, right? So it's totally up to your choice, right? But yes, management interface can also be utilized, right? So in my case, my LTMs can communicate to each other using management interface as well as the failover one. It's up to you. What do you want, right? The next now I'll keep it same. And thereafter it is asking for primary local mirror address. That's my failover VLAN again, and that's fine. Secondary local mirror address, I can have like internal or external, but none is by default, and I'll keep it default, right? That's what recommended is for mirroring the configuration, right? Say next. Thereafter, you have a standard pair configuration and advanced device management configuration. So we have standard pair like active standby. This is what we are, we are looking for, right? So we are configuring active standby failover. So just click next under standard pair configuration. So next. Then there are two different options. Discover configured peer. That's something we have not configured yet, right? We have not configured the peer. Configure peer or subordinate device. Yeah, that's what I have to do. So I have to click on finish, right? Because I have to configure the peer, right? So I clicked on finish. So I'm done over LTM1. Thereafter, you will continue with LTM2, right? So over LTM2, again, you can click on F5 and then you can click on run config sync HC utility and then say next. Then it will ask for the failover method. So I'm going to use network cable only. Say next now. Select internal VLAN, select existing one. So internal VLAN. So your floating IP, non-floating IP, everything will be there, right? Automatically. Next. Once again, I'll select the existing one because I have already created that. So you have two options. Either you create your VLANs already and call them over here, or you create at this time only. So it's totally up to you. External is already there. Allow default, everything is good. Say next. Then it will ask for the failover interface config, right? So select existing VLAN, that's failover VLAN. So 10.1.2, this is fine, and then say next. Right, guys, thereafter, NTP is not needed. So click on next. DNS, next option will be for DNS, right? So DNS is not something which is mandatory for us. So I'll skip that too. The next. Taking long time than usual. Okay, local address is again my, the failover VLAN. The next. All right, I'll keep it same. Say next for management failover, right? So I kept it same. Then primary local mirror address is my failover VLAN. This is good. So I'll just say next. Same as before. Obviously, we are going to configure active standby. So say next. Thereafter, again, we will get two different options. So discover configured peer. So yeah, this time we have already configured the peer. So we have to discover that. So say next and discover your configured peer, right? So we are going to perform discovery now. So peer, device type is my peer, right? Device IP address, I have to assign like 10.1.1, right? Administrative username, password. So that's admin, Imerita at the rate 123. Say retrieve device configuration or device information, right? So it has retrieved that. And thereafter, say device certificate matches. So we are using like self-signed certificate, right? So device name is LTM1, right? That's where we are going to add a device to a sync failover group. So by default, it has picked up its device group name as this. If you want to create a device group by your own, like device group failover 1 or device group 1 like this. Okay, so it's up to you. You can customize that, but it can automatically pick that up, and you can just click on, add device. So I'm already on LTM2, and we are adding LTM1 into this device group. So my device will get added to this device group automatically, right? So that's how you are going to configure high availability between these two big IPs. So it will create a device group now with the name of device group 1. And within that device group, I'll have two different devices. One is LTM1, other one is LTM2. Only one LTM within this device group will be active at the time, right? So wait for some more time, because in backend, the process is still going on. So once process is completed, only one device should be active and other device should be standby. You can make the configuration on any device, right? Either on active or standby, and it will also get synced automatically if you have enabled auto syncing, because it's up to you. Like you can, whether you want to enable the auto syncing or not. Ideally in production, we don't do that. We don't prefer to enable auto syncing, right? You know why? Like sometimes what you do is, let's say you made some changes on active unit. Thereafter, changes were replicated to standby automatically because you already enabled the auto sync, and that change caused some outages. So that means like it will affect a lot, right? So better option would be not to enable auto syncing and then make changes over active one, active unit, and then monitor your changes, verify your changes. If everything is fine, then sync your configuration manually. Okay, so we are standby now, and LTM1 is active. So both of them are saying awaiting initial sync. So yeah, we have to perform initial sync manually. Okay, to do so, let's say I'm on LTM1 now, right? So to do so, I mean to perform initial sync, you go to device management, right? So you have a device management. Then go to your overview. Then you can see the device group is already there, right? So you have so many things over there, right? Also, you go to devices, and then you can see that you have two devices over here. One is LTM1, other one is LTM2. Thereafter, you can go to the device group. I created a device group 1, which has these two devices. Okay. Now, look at this. Even if you look at this, sync type is what? Manual with incremental sync, right? And both of the devices are member of this device group. What I will do, I'll just say automatic with incremental sync. Save on automatic sync, save the configuration to file on the remote device after an automatic configuration sync. We can say that. Okay. Thereafter, network failover is already enabled, right? And just update it now. So I have enabled automatic sync, but at least first time you have to do the sync manually, right? So I went to device group. Inside device group, I enabled the automatic sync. Thereafter, let me go back to the overview under device management itself and perform sync at least once manually, right? So it is saying that awaiting initial sync. So we have these two devices here in place, one LTM1, other LTM2. Now, let's say LTM1 was already part of my network and we have brought LTM2 natively in this infrastructure. So what would you like to do? You would always like to copy the configuration from the existing LTM, which is LTM1, onto your LTM2, right? So select LTM1. Let's say, I mean, we are assuming that LTM1 was pre-existed in my infrastructure. What is it saying? Push the selected device configuration to the group, which means it will copy, it will get the configuration from the selected device, and then it will push that configuration to this device group, which means all of the members of this device group will have configuration from this particular device. And one more thing I would like to add here, in active standby, it is not something like you just have to have only two devices. One is active and other one is standby. Even you can have more and more devices. Like you can have 3, 4, I believe that it supports up to maybe 8 devices in a single device group. I'll have to double check on that. But yes, you can add multiple devices into a single device group. Not only two, in fact, more than two. Okay. And sometimes you will get an advantage of this feature. And this is something that we have uniqueness within the F5. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to perform this synchronization manually. So I selected LTM1 and then I clicked on sync. So now it says syncing. Not all devices, it says not on all devices, right? So what it says does not have the last synced configuration. So I have to have full sync initially, right? So to do so, go to device group back because our sync got failed and then say like manual with full sync, update, and thereafter you go to devices. I mean overview. Select one of the device. Once again LTM1. Click on sync, and this time full sync should take place, right? So full synchronization must take place. So the complete configuration will be copied from LTM1 to LTM2. However, we do not have any configuration over LTM1 yet. So wait for some time. So LTM1 is active. Now if you go to LTM2, unable to contact big IP device. So maybe that there are some issues here, right? Give it some time, everything will be back. So configuring high availability, which is HA, is not much difficult, especially the active standby. I will also teach you active failover. That's happening just because of, my system has become so slow. I've turned off my, um, you know, GNS3. Therefore, I should have some, sufficient CPU cycles for LTM1, LTM2, and you can see that. We have to wait for some more time. CPU is hitting a lot. You can see that. Sometimes it's spiking, hitting 50, 60, like that. No worries. Continue. It says like all devices are in sync. That's good news. And it's in sync. Then you can also go to LTM2. It is also in sync. You can see that. It is also in sync now. And it's a standby, right? You can forcefully make your standby box as an active. And this is what we do in production. Let's say you are asked to update the operating system. Like currently you are using 14.1. Let's say you have been asked to upgrade your operating system from 14.1 to 14.2. Do it on a standby box first. Upgrade your operating system on a standby box and then go to standby box. Thereafter, what you will do is go to device management, device group, or maybe devices. So I have two devices under device management. We are LTM2. So I'm clicking on LTM2. Thereafter, there is an option force to standby. So that's something that we will have to do over active. So let's say I'm on active. Go to devices, and I am LTM1. Click on LTM1, and then there is an option force to standby. Click here on force to standby. Now LTM1 will become standby, right? So it will be standby, and LTM2 will become active automatically. You see, right? And now you are active. Therefore, you have an option to force to standby. So you can forcefully say that, hey, I want to, like I'm active, but I want to force yourself as a standby box. So that this box will become a standby. Thereafter, now again, it is a standby, and LTM1 is being configured as an active, because on LTM2 I said, hey, you have to be you have to be standby box, right? So that's how you will configure active standby. Now, in case if you are making some changes onto big IP1, you get my point, onto big IP1, then your changes will not get synced automatically. Let me show you. Go to local traffic, go to nodes, create some nodes. Create, like server 1, IP address, that's 20.10, right? So repeat, server 2, 192, 20.20, repeat, server 3, that's 20.30. Finished it. So you have created, and that's where it will start showing you changes pending, because changes will not get synchronized automatically, right? That's why under LTM, if you go to nodes, you don't get any node over there. Those are available on LTM1, but that's not something which is available on LTM2, because you said manually sync. So go to device management, go to overview, and then you have to sync your changes now, right? So you say that you have changes on LTM1, right? So select LTM1 and then say sync. Or You do one thing, go to device group, select your group, say manual with incremental. Say update. I'm sorry. Say automatic with incrementals. Say update. Right? Thereafter, we go back to overview, select LTM1, sync manually first time. I mean, because I had some pending changes, right? So it will get it should be it should be in sync. Okay. Let me do one thing then. Um, Go to. I don't think so. I said like automatic sync under device group. Let me do one thing. Let me go back and then overview. I have enabled manual and thereafter I'm syncing it again. It should sync automatically. I mean, it should sync now. Synchronize LTM1 to group device trust group. How? Okay, which means group was incorrectly selected. That should have been group 1. Just a moment. My issues like due to CPU utilization, it's giving some, like there is a huge latency actually, I would say. Looks like CPU is spiking up. Sometimes it's low, sometimes it's higher, like that. Let the connection get established again, and thereafter I'll enable the automatic sync. No worries. This time I'm doing the manual sync, and right after this I'll enable the automatic sync, and thereafter we'll make changes, right? All right, it's all good, right? Synchronization. Oh, looks good. Yeah, it's in sync, right? So very good. And thereafter, you do one thing: go back to your device group, and then select automatic with incremental sync, and then say update. Thereafter, you go back to your LTM and let me create a pool. And this time you would see that as soon as I make changes here on active one, let's say I created a pool, just a moment, and it will get created onto standby as well. So like web server pool, right guys? Let's say I'm using gateway ICMP, not gateway ICMP because those are not really up. Go to node list, port 8000, add server 2, add server 3, add. Finished. I have created this pool here on active unit, but now if you go back to your standby unit and check if it is available or not, so it must be available here on standby unit. Give it a moment, it is still receiving the configuration. Yeah, it's there. So that's what I wanted to tell you. Like if you enable automatic synchronization, as soon as you make changes on one unit, the change will get replicated over the other unit as well, immediately with immediate effect. However, if you keep manual synchronization enabled, then like let's say you have made some changes on LTM2, evaluate your changes. If everything is fine, then perform synchronization manually. You get my point? And that's what is recommended in production environment. If anyone having any question around active standby failover, right, please go ahead and ask your questions. One more thing I would like to show you here, like in case of active standby, in case if your active unit goes down, let's say you shut down this active, right, then standby will become active automatically. That clear? So for example, you're on active unit, that's LTM1, and you said like shut down, right? This is active unit. So now LTM2 will become active automatically. You see, it's active now. And even it will not display you in sync because in some time it will lost connectivity with LTM1, right? So what I will do, I'll go to LTM1 and will power on this virtual machine once again. However, whoever has become active already will remain active. So LTM2 was active, it will remain as active. And LTM1 will come up, however, it will remain standby. Right, guys? All right. This device is back. Says disconnected. Give it some more time. So as soon as this device comes online, LTM2 will say, hey, it's connected and in sync. All right, in sync and it's active, and standby is back again, right? Now, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and I'll just turn on this topology, start, and thereafter these three devices start. So at least the servers can come up and we can perform some tests and we can see some results over here. Let me go back to my Windows 7 machine, resume virtual machine. And also what I will do is I'm gonna perform implementation, right, for the virtual server, this time using IApp. Okay, so I'll be using IApp to perform deployment of the applications or creating the virtual server. So I'll go to default monitor under nodes, I'll add ICMP update so that the status of the nodes can come up. Yeah, it's up now. The status of the pool should be up now. So let me go ahead and let me add the ICMP as a monitor. So the status of the pool should be up. Yep, that's good, right? And all are in sync, right? So even if you go to the standby box and if you look at the pool list, it should display you the status of this pool as green. It says like receiving configuration from your device, and once again the performance of the big IPs is quite slow. But no worries, we will keep doing work slowly. Next time I'll be, until now I never had this kind of issue on my laptop, but looks like that there are some technical issues. So I'll be using the lab which is hosted over the server. Still stuck. Oh, man. Okay. Okay. All right. So if you go to tools, it should show you. Yeah, it's up, right? Guys, so I'll go to active unit now, right? And over active unit, I'm gonna deploy a service using IAP. So guys, I hope that I have used this IAP before as well. If not, just try to listen me carefully. IAP is kind of automation, kind of automated tool of deploying the application, and that this is something which is recommended by F5 to deploy. They recommend to use this IAP for the application deployment purposes. Let's say you have a website, you want to host that over your big IP, right? So host your virtual servers using IAP, because if you are using IAP, it will use some predefined templates, and that template contains predefined best practices from F5 itself, right? So if you go to IAP and let's say you have application services, right? And then if you go to the templates, right? So you can even go to the templates and you can see that which old templates are by default there, right? So these old templates does exist already, right? However, F5 over F5 website you can have or you can get more and more templates, and if you have any, then you can import those templates from here. Like you have an import button, right? You have to download that from F5 website, and thereafter you can import them here, and then you can deploy. You can start utilizing those templates while deploying the services. So now go to application services, and then click on create. So you see that how how important or how this IAP is um, is pretty handy, and of course I would say like it's easy, rather creating virtual servers manually. So I'm not going to virtual servers this time. My template will create the virtual servers automatically. So let's say the name of it is HTTP as HTTP as virtual server. So template, I want to deploy, let's say HTTP services, HTTP based application. So I have selected F5 HTTP template. Thereafter, it will ask for filling up some fields. And once you fill those fields, right, thereafter it will deploy everything, whatever is needed automatically. Taking time. Okay. So do you want to see help? If you want to see help, you can. Which configuration mode you want? Basic, use F5 recommended settings, right? Thereafter, scroll down. Do you want to use the latest TCP profile? Please select one. Yes, I want to use the latest TCP profile. What type of network connect client to the big IP? Of course, will come through the WAN side network. And servers are connected using LAN side. How should the big IP system handle SSL traffic? So I would say terminate SSL from clients and plain text to servers, which means SSL offload. So I have to use the certificate. So I'm using the default certificate, which is already available on my box. So what IP address do you want to use for the virtual server? So let's say I said 5.5.5, right? Port number is 443. The host name is like www.imerita.com. Right, guys? imerita.com. Thereafter, pool. Use the existing pool. So I have selected the existing pool here. Which compression profile do you want to use? It says create a profile based on WAN optimized compression, right? So it will create the profiles in backend automatically, whether it is a TCP profile whatsoever. It will create all profiles like SSL profile, compression profile, and your optimization profile, everything it will create in backend automatically, and it will get them attached to your virtual server automatically. So you just have to put what name. We just allocated name, selected template, then we said, hey, use the profile recommended by your on for TCP, and I said for SSL encryption, I said terminate SSL from client and then print text to the server, which means I want to perform SSL uploading. Then select your certificates, provide your virtual server IP, port number on which it will listen for, then host name, select your pool, and that's it. That's it. Say finished. Once you click on finished, you would see that your big IP will go ahead and will deploy the virtual server dynamically, right? So now if you go back to your local traffic and go to virtual servers, like virtual servers, then you must see two different virtual servers. You created only one, but your IAP is intelligent enough that if you are deploying HTTPS based virtual server, then you would also require a HTTP based virtual server for the redirection purposes. So what it has done, it has created a HTTP virtual server for port 80, and it has also applied a I rule over here, right, to perform redirection. Like if somebody is hitting this IP address 5.5.5 over port 80, your big IP will perform redirection. And do you remember that in early days, right, earlier we did this manually, right? We created two different virtual servers manually. We created I rule manually. We applied I rules manually. We created HTTP profile manually. We did a lot of work manually. But using IAP, it has become so easy for you to manage it, to create it, right? So now you can see that virtual server is already in place. What I will do, I'll go back to my Windows PC, right? I'll log in, right? And then I'll perform some testing here. So I'll try to hit 5.5.5. I should have access to my web services or web pages. So that's how you can utilize your IAP feature within this platform. All right. So let me access the browser. ये आप दूध लाते हो या मट्ठा लाते हो? अच्छा. Okay. So let me hit 5.5.5. And even I will show you that AutoMap has been enabled onto your virtual server dynamically, right? AutoMap has also been enabled, and you didn't do anything. You just created a IAP. You just utilize the IAP template for the virtual server provisioning, or I would say like for the purpose of application provisioning. So since SSL connection was not private, because the certificate was not trusted certificate. So now you can see that you have accessed it using HTTPS, and yeah, it's all good, right? So you can see that you are able to access it, right? So if you refresh your page, then even looks like that it has enabled the persistence automatically using cookie, right? So even if you go back, look at this virtual server, right? And then you can see that what all profiles have been attached, like HTTP profile, TCP profile, HTTP profile is in place, right? SSL profile is in place automatically, and then AutoMap is in place automatically. One Connect profile is in place. HTTP compression profile is in place. Acceleration profile is in place, and thereafter, if you go to resources, under resources, you can see persistence is already there, cookie persistence as a primary, and fallback is your source IP address. You see that? So everything is already in place. So you didn't do anything like that. Okay. And if you compare, or if you look at the HTTP virtual server for port 80, then you can see iRule is already there. The HTTP profile and iRule must be there. So it must have HTTP profile. Yes, it has HTTP profile. You can see that HTTP profile. And thereafter you go to resources, and there over there you can see that iRule is attached to this virtual server for the redirection purposes. You can see that. Okay. So it's quite easy to deploy your applications using IAP, right, guys? So that's how you can. But the problem is that in case if you wanna make some changes within the virtual server, now you cannot do that from here, right? So if you want to make some changes, you need to go back to your IAP, right? Go to your application services, and over there you would see that one application you already deployed, right? So click over here, and then you can modify if needed, but you have to make the modification from the IAP itself. So you go to properties, not components. Under properties, you can change its properties if needed, right? So select advanced and then reconfiguration. Reconfigure it, and whatever option you want to call, or whatever the configuration modification you want, go ahead and make those modifications. But that's how you would leverage IAPS for the application deployment purposes. Here you go. You could also select the advanced button, and thereafter you could say like use basic or maybe advanced configure, and then you would have a lot more options over here, right, sir? So you can you would have all the options available while configuring the virtual server. All of the options will remain same. So that's how you can make the modification within the virtual servers which you created by leveraging IAPS, okay, or by the help of IAPS. So that's how you can add it, you can modify the configuration. So it's quite easy to deploy your applications using IAPS, right, sir? Now, what I will do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to convert this high availability from active standby to active active. Right, guys? I'm going to convert this high availability from active standby to active active. Right, guys? So I'm on active unit. So if you go to the device management, there is a traffic group, and there is only one traffic group at the moment. And within that traffic group, who is active? That's LTM2. Who is next active device? That's LTM1. Now what I will do, I'll go ahead and will create multiple traffic groups. So by default, there is only one traffic group. So I'll go ahead and we'll create multiple traffic groups this time. So traffic group, I'm creating one more traffic group over here. So let's say I said traffic group 2, and thereafter failover to device with the best HA score, no failover using preferred device order, then the load aware. All right. So what I will do for traffic group 1, by default LTM2 is active and LTM1 is standby. For this fit traffic group 2, what I will do, you know, LTM1 will be active and LTM2, will be standby. So create traffic group now. And once you create this traffic group, upon creating this traffic group, now both of them will be active, right? So LTM1, this is LTM2, right? It is active. If you go to LTM1, it is also online and active. So both of them now working as an active. You know how? Like you already had a traffic group 1. For traffic group 1, who is active? That's LTM2, right? And who is standby? That's LTM1, right? And for traffic group 2, you have defined LTM1 as active and LTM2 is next active device. However, this is not something which is really recommended by F5, and I have already told you that what's the reason behind that, okay? Because in case if both of the devices, I mean the resource utilization on both of the devices has reached like 40-45%, and thereafter if any one of them goes down, then everything will be on one device, right? So other device will go down automatically then, because other device will not be having capability to handle that much amount of data that it needs to support. So then there will not be any advantage of having kind of active failover. So better is like you have active failover in place, but have more than 2 devices. Like if I have 2 traffic groups, then have at least 3 devices. If you have 3 traffic groups, then try to have at least 4 devices. So every time you have at least 1 device in spare for the purpose of load sharing. Okay, and that's why in a single device group you can have more than 2 devices. That's why F5 has that capability. Okay, so now I have created this traffic group 2, and at the moment there is no object within the traffic group 2. But what I will do, I can go ahead and I can deploy another application using IAP itself. So I'll go to application services once again, and I'll deploy another website. So I said create one more application, right guys? Create one more application, provide its name, let's say HTTP VS or maybe HTTPS VS2, virtual server 2. Template is again HTTP, or maybe I could say like maybe FTP. It's up to me, right guys? It's up to me. So I could say like FTP. Slow, right? Give it some time. Okay, it's there. So in place of HTTP, let's say this time I set for FTP, right guys? So if FTP is there, then I can select that, but it's not there. So let me keep the HTTP one. And under basic, under template is selection, instead of basic, make it advanced. And then thereafter, you can select your traffic group. So let's say I selected traffic group 2. Okay. And thereafter, say offloading, and IP address is like 5.5.6, and www.google.com. The pool is web server pool, and that's it. Go ahead and finish this up. So once again, it will go ahead and will deploy the virtual servers, and this time it will be part of traffic group 2. So who is active for traffic group 2? It's LTM1, which means for this new virtual server that I have just created, who will be active or who will be working as active router. So you can see under virtual servers, we have HTTPS virtual server 2 as well, right? Which is 5556. So for this one, your LTM1 is active, not LTM2. In fact, you can see that under device management, go back to your traffic groups, and then you can see that for traffic, inside traffic group 2, you have two objects, right? So even if you click on traffic group 2, you can see that which all objects are part of it, right? So if you look at the failover objects, you have these two virtual servers. Is that clear? So that's how you can convert your active standby into active failover, right? So we already had a device group. We have not changed anything within the device group. We just created multiple traffic groups over here, right? So we already had only one traffic group. Then thereafter we created another traffic group too, and we created some more virtual servers, and we added them into another traffic group too, right? And one more thing I would like to share, with you, even if you are creating your virtual servers manually over here, right? So let's say you are over virtual server and then you are trying to create them, so even when you creating your virtual servers manually, you can define your traffic group, that in which traffic group you want to keep your virtual server. So it's totally up to you. Okay. So that's how you can convert your active standby failover into active failover. So guys, I'm also done with IAPS. I'm also done with the high availability, right? So let me just show you something here. So there is no option that you can find here, right? To select your, even if you go to the advanced one, still you won't have that option available, that to which traffic group, in which traffic group you want to have this virtual server. However, later on, like once you create this virtual server, let's say I have created this virtual server, let's say test, and this is something like 5.5.7 HTTP pool, finished. So we have created this virtual server now. By default, it will be member of traffic group 1 by default. So let it create first, right? Now if I go back to device management, traffic group, and then go to traffic group 1, wait, it is still loading. So you can see that one more virtual server was added under traffic group 1. So if you go to the failover object, so I have selected traffic group 1. So if you go to failover object, you would see this test virtual server is part of this failover, is part of this traffic group 1. Okay. So you can see that this is part of traffic group 1, 5557, right? So click on this 5557 and make some changes over here. Part of traffic group 1, make it traffic group, make it part of traffic group 2. Like this is how I changed it, right? Like this. Update. Okay, it's already updated. So now you have virtual server list, inside you have virtual address list. So from here you could also change it. I mean, like not by not going to your device management, you could directly go virtual address list from virtual servers, and from there you could change it, right? So you can see traffic groups. So now it's part of traffic group 2, right? So if you go back your traffic device management traffic groups, it's 4 now, and here it is 3 now. So if you go to traffic group 2 failover object, you can see that 5557 is part of traffic group 2 now. Okay. So guys, this is how you can leverage the active failover. Okay, that's how it is going to work. Anyone having any questions, please go ahead, ask your questions. If not, then I'll continue tomorrow now.
Sir, these HTTP servers are an unknown, so do we need to apply monitor?
Sorry?
These HTTPS servers, the redirect one,
Mm-hmm.
are an unknown, so they will be an unknown only, or we can.
Those are not HTTPS. Basically, those are for port 80 if you look at them. And there is no pool attached to them, and therefore there is no status detected. Okay, that's why it is unknown. Those were created by the IAP dynamically. Remember, for the redirection
Yes, yes.
purposes. So there is no pool attached to these virtual servers by default. And that's why virtual server is not able to, or is not capable for is not capable to identify its status, whether it is up, down, whatsoever, because there is no pool attached. Because the status of the virtual server depends upon the status of the pool, right? If the status of the pool is green, then the status of the virtual server will also remain green. But at the moment, onto these virtual servers, there is no pool attached to them. Hello?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Understood?
Yes.
So there is no pool attached to them. That's why there is no status. That's why status is unknown. Okay. Any other question from anybody else? Like maybe if you have Arjun or maybe Praveen or Jagdish.
No question.
So tomorrow I'm gonna continue with the I rules. I'll cover I rules, and tomorrow it will be a final class for us, right? So I'll cover I rules. Also, I'll cover TCP dump. However, I have used that command before as well, but I'll execute few more commands, right? So I'll utilize TCP dump. Also, I'll cover that how to take the like how to generate QKView file and then how to utilize that by ourselves over iHealth. Okay, that's what I'm going to cover tomorrow.
Okay, sir. Sir, policies.
Yeah, policies also we can discuss tomorrow. No issues.
Okay, okay.
That's under virtual server. That also we can cover. I'm sorry. We have only certification guides, but we are still working on the lab guide. And let me ask the trainer if lab guide is ready. We can get this shared with you. Okay. Yeah. All right, guys. Then see you tomorrow and bye for now.
Okay, sir. Bye bye.
Have a good rest of the day. Bye bye.